Emergency procedures. Overview and content. This procedure describes what to do in case of an emergency on board any COCL Outsourcing Company Limited (COCL) vessel. Following these procedures will enable vessel personnel to provide assistance in emergency cases and to meet COCL requirements regarding onboard emergencies. The following areas will be covered: personal injury or illness, oil or hazardous substance spill, collision, allision, grounding, fire, sinking, and man overboard. Personal injury or illness. In the event of personal injury or illness, the person in charge must take action including, but not limited to, the following. 1. If necessary, obtain assistance from off-watch crew members by sounding the general alarm. 2. Administer first aid to the injured or ill person. 3. Determine the injured or ill person's need for emergency care. 4. If there is no need for additional medical assistance, notify COCL dispatcher of injury or illness. Fill out the standard incident report. 5. Call the COCL dispatcher. This is a priority call. 6. Give appropriate information including, at a minimum, the condition of the person and the location of the vessel. 7. Give the estimated time of arrival at the nearest location where emergency help can meet the vessel, and either proceed to that location or obtain assistance to evacuate the person via emergency air or water transportation. 8. Continue first aid until emergency help arrives. 9. If possible, obtain information from the person regarding history of the accident or illness. 10. Obtain information from the person regarding the location of his or her family members. 11. Contact the vessel personnel department to arrange for a relief crew member and give the location of the ill or injured person's family. 12. Ensure that the person has identification and personal belongings before leaving the vessel. 13. Call the COCL dispatcher for further instructions. 14. Report significant near-miss, personal injury incidents to the COCL Safety Department. Oil or hazardous substance spill. Spill on the deck during cargo transfer. Shut down the transfer, using the emergency shutdown procedure agreed to during the pre-transfer conference. Put on appropriate chemical protective clothing and respirator. Stop and contain the flow of product, provided that available personal protective equipment is adequate to ensure personal safety. If the product does not go into the water, notify the vessel captain or wheelhouse person on watch and obtain assistance and contain product on the deck using bag oil dry and/or absorbent pads. Spill in the water during cargo transfer. Shut down the transfer, using the emergency shutdown procedure agreed to during the pre-transfer conference. Put on appropriate chemical protective clothing and respirator. Stop the flow of product, provided that available personal protective equipment is adequate to ensure personal safety. Notify the vessel captain or wheelhouse person on watch and obtain assistance. Contact the COCL dispatcher. This is a priority call. Give pertinent spill information. Ensure that the Jamaica Coast Guard has been notified. If product spilled is black oil, promptly deploy sweep boom and plastic containment boom. Contain remaining cargo on deck with bagged oil dry and/or spill pads. Evaluate with the dispatcher and the operations department the risk involved in cleanup, depending upon the product and the quantity spilled. Spill on a dock during transfer. Shut down the transfer, using emergency shutdown procedures agreed to during the pre-transfer conference. Notify the vessel captain or wheelhouse person on watch. Contact the COCL dispatcher. This is a priority call. Give pertinent spill information. If the spill has entered the water, ensure that the Jamaican Coast Guard is notified. It is the responsibility of the dock personnel to call the Jamaican Coast Guard and report the spill. However, if the dock personnel do not call the Jamaican Coast Guard, The wheelman on watch must notify a COCL dispatcher and he/she will report the spill to the Coast Guard. Spill in the water due to a grounding or collision. 1. Put on appropriate chemical protective clothing and respirator. 2. Evaluate the condition of the barge and the extent of the spill. 3. Contact the COCL dispatcher. This is a priority call. Give pertinent spill information. 4. Evaluate how to stop the flow of the product with the operations department. Measures which may be taken include, but are not limited to, the following. Pump water from flooded void compartments. Ground barge in shallow water. Transfer cargo from leaking tank to other tanks or another barge. Or other appropriate action as determined by maintenance and repair personnel. 5. If the product spilled is black oil, promptly deploy sweep boom and plastic containment boom. Put out absorbent band, or spill pads. 6. Evaluate with the dispatcher and the operations department the risk involved in cleanup, depending upon the product and the quantity spilled. If the spill is small and personnel exposure risk is low, pick up contaminated absorbent band, or spill pads and dispose of in accordance with COCL waste disposal procedures, and leave sweep boom and plastic containment boom in place until notified otherwise. If the spill is large or personnel exposure risk is high, leave absorbent band, or spill pads until an authorized cleanup contractor arrives on scene. Follow the instructions given by the COCL on-scene coordinator for spills involving the COCL emergency response team. Collision, ALLISION. In the event a collision is imminent, the captain or wheelhouse person in charge must take action including, but not limited to, the following. Sound 5 short blasts on horn. Sound general alarm, if appropriate. And instruct crew to put on life jackets or exposure suits, if appropriate. In the event a collision occurs, the vessel captain or wheelhouse person in charge must take action including, but not limited to, the following. Attend to any injured crew member. Notify nearby marine traffic if collision is in, near, or blocking a navigable channel. Assess damage to the boat, tow, or structure. Put on chemical protective clothing and respirator if required. If the collision is with an aid to navigation, notify COCL dispatcher. This is a priority call. Notify Jamaican Coast Guard. Document the damage, including photographs. Fill out COCL standard incident report. Get underway. If the collision is with a structure, notify COCL dispatcher. This is a priority call. Notify the appropriate person in charge, logmaster, bridge tender, dockmaster, etc. Notify the Jamaican Coast Guard if appropriate. Document the damage, including photographs. Fill out the COCL standard incident report. Fill out the relevant Jamaican Coast Guard form. If the Jamaican Coast Guard is not notified, the vessel captain or wheelhouse person on watch, COCL dispatcher, and the appropriate person in charge will decide a course of action and when to get underway. Grounding. A serious grounding is one in which the tow cannot get off the ground within 1 hour or equipment damage occurs, includes possible sinking or environmental damage. In the event of a serious grounding, the person in charge must take action including, but not limited to, the following. Sound general alarm if appropriate. Instruct crew to put on life jackets or exposure suits, if appropriate. Notify nearby marine traffic if grounding is in, near, or blocking a navigable channel. Notify the COCL dispatcher. Inspect the barge for damage. Put on chemical protective clothing and respirator if required. If cargo is leaking from the barge, follow the COCL procedures for spill response. If water is leaking in the void compartment, pump the water out with a portable pump. Do not pump water if mixed with cargo. Determine if water is leaking into cargo compartments. Put on chemical protective clothing if required. A minor grounding is one in which the tow can get off the ground within 1 hour and no equipment is damaged. In the event of a minor grounding, the person in charge must take action including, but not limited to, the following. If no visible damage or hull leak is found, determine if the tow can get underway in an hour or less. If the vessel can get underway in 1 hour or less, report the incident during a routine traffic call. If there is no visible damage to the barge, but the vessel cannot get underway within 1 hour, evaluate the grounding and call the COCL dispatcher for assistance. Notify the Jamaican Coast Guard if appropriate. Follow the instructions from the dispatcher for getting off ground. Fire. In the event of fire on the galley stove, use the fire extinguisher to put out the fire. When this happens, take steps including, but not limited to, the following. Assign a fire flash watch. Assess damage for the fire. Notify the vessel captain or wheelhouse person on watch. Determine the source of fire. Take corrective action. If the source is electrical, de-energize the source. Follow COCL lockout, tagout procedures. Notify COCL dispatcher and arrange repair. In the event the heat-sensitive automatic fire extinguisher does not put out a galley stove fire, or in the event of another galley fire, or fires other than an engine room fire, take steps including, but not limited to, the following. Notify the vessel captain, wheelhouse person on watch, or other crew member before attempting to put the fire out. Sound the general alarm and announce fire on the PA system. Alert the crew. Yell fire. Put on a life jacket. Take a head count of the crew. Follow the COCL procedures for personal injury or illness, if appropriate. Investigate the fire to determine its size, location, and suspected source. Fill out COCL Standard Incident Report. If the fire can be put out with a handheld fire extinguisher, put out the fire. Notify the vessel captain or wheelhouse person on watch. Assign a fire flash watch. Determine the source of the fire. Take corrective action. Follow COCL lockout, tagout procedures. Assess the damage from the fire. Determine if it is safe to continue to operate the vessel. Notify the COCL dispatcher and formulate a plan based on the damage to the vessel. Fill out COCL Standard Incident Report. If there is a fire in the engine room and the fire can be put out with a handheld fire extinguisher, take steps including, but not limited to, the following. Put out the fire. Notify the vessel captain or wheelhouse person on watch. Assign a fire flash watch. Determine the source of the fire. Take corrective action. Follow COCL lockout, tagout procedures. Assess the damage from the fire. Determine if it's safe to continue to operate the vessel. Notify the COCL dispatcher and formulate a plan based on the damage to the vessel. Fill out COCL Standard Incident Report. If the fire cannot be put out with a handheld fire extinguisher, report to the vessel captain or wheelhouse person. Take action to stop or ground the tow as soon as possible. Evacuate crew members from the engine room. Activate the engine room CO2 system only when directed by the vessel captain or wheelhouse person in charge. Prepare to break out the boat from the barge. If safe to do so, slacken face wires on boat. Prepare to stop engines as soon as possible. Request assistance from nearby vessels. Call Mayday or VHF Channel 16. Notify the COCL dispatcher. This is a priority call. Activate the onboard CO2 system and close doors to the engine room. Sinking. In the event the vessel appears to be sinking, the person in charge must take action including, but not limited to, the following. Sound the general alarm. Instruct crew to put on life jackets or exposure suits if applicable. If the crew can prevent the vessel from sinking, take appropriate emergency action and call the COCL dispatcher. This is a priority call. If the crew cannot prevent sinking, call Mayday on VHF channel 16. Contact other boats in the area and request assistance. Use the appropriate VHF channel to establish contact. If the engines are running and the crew can ground the vessel in shallow water and call COCL dispatcher. If the crew cannot ground the vessel and the engines are not running, prepare the crew to abandon the vessel. Take emergency signaling devices, walkie-talkie, signal flares, signal smoke, and other survival gear and clothing, and abandon the vessel. Get on board the barge, skiff, or life raft. Man overboard. In the event of a man overboard, the person in charge must take action including, but not limited to, the following. Take evasive measures to avoid running over the man overboard, including putting engines in neutral gear. Sound the general alarm. Announce man overboard on the PA system. Sound 5 short blasts on the horn, if traffic is in the area. If the victim is visible, keep him in sight at all times or designate another crew member to keep him in sight. Determine if the victim is conscious. If the victim is conscious, determine whether you can reach him with the lighted life rings. Stop the tow when you are sure that the man in the water is clear of the boat. Retrieve the man from the water. If you cannot reach the victim with a lighted life ring, retrieve the man by an alternative method. If the man is not conscious, retrieve him by whatever means available. If the man is not visible, note a landmark or mark in the area near where the man was last seen. Notify marine traffic in the area and request assistance. Search for the man overboard, using available light at night. Call COCL dispatcher. This is a priority call. Continue to search for the man until he is found or until the Coast Guard calls off the search. If the man is injured, follow COCL procedures for personal injury or illness. Fill out the COCL Standard Incident Report. Conclusion. The objective of these procedures is to ensure, as far as practicable, the safety, health and well-being of everyone aboard a COCL vessel. Failure to follow these procedures may result in devastating consequences.